thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me.
Thank you.
How is the tour going so far?
Last night was fantastic. Yeah. I have this, enormous kit with a lot of electronics and stuff, and for some reason, I did a filming at Drum Channel that was perfect. The Musical Instrument Museum in Phoenix, and that was perfect. Beautiful theater. And then I did a club up in Denver, and that was perfect. And then my bass drums just started to act weird on me. And, the bass note that they're tuned to and the MIDI note that comes out of that was just really intermittent and random. So sometimes it would be no note coming out, and other times it would be a huge boom, So we finally solved that last night, and the last 5 gigs have been very difficult for me. I don't know what people think, but it's tough for me to be so distracted about a technical problem like that.
But other than that, often, though.
No, I mean, it's been pretty consistent over the years. I've been using the same setup for quite a while, and I don't understand why from one day to the next, unless it's the humidity or something. I have no idea. I mean, I changed power supplies, I changed settings, I re-EQ'd in 2 different places, and finally we just put the damn thing through a compressor, so no matter what happens, if it's loud or soft, it will come out. So that seemed to work, and I had a good time last night. I think I played well and was able to, be in the flow that happens, that I expect to happen every night, and usually does, but hasn't been for the last few dates.
Well, at least it's back on track. Now, you got to tell us a little bit about this set. How did this all start? I mean, I've seen some videos of this thing, and it for those people who haven't seen this thing, it is a monster set. Where did you get the idea for all this, and how tough is it taking it on the road and tuning every night?
Well, physically it's tough. There's certain things that have to be right. The carpet is got little markings on it, and if the rack doesn't go on the markings exactly, and the rug is a little bit wrinkled, that can throw things off. And then you'll find, at the end of a row or something, one pedal doesn't hit the thing it's supposed to because, it wasn't put up right from somewhere in the middle of the rack or something. And the tuning is not too bad. It's pretty much in tune every night, except when you make radical, climate changes. And I got a fantastic tech who works very hard with me to set it up and break it down and load it in, and he's also mixing, which is a real asset. This is the first time I've had a tech who's an audio engineer, so that's been cool. So all in all, it's okay. Where it started is a very difficult thing for me to pinpoint. I could look at classical chamber music I played in college, which had multiple percussion setups, multiple instruments. I could look towards Zappa, who made me play. I was playing a small 3-piece jazz kit, and I went from that into a Ludwig Octoplus, monster. And then, after, I think it was around Missing Persons, I wanted to play electronic because that was a real fad at that point, and MIDI had not yet been invented, so it was a bit difficult, and I had to spend a lot of money and hire a bunch of people to make custom things for me. So I at the end of the day, I can tell myself, I was awarded 3 patents, and I did something before it was much easier to do. And built a kit that worked and looked cool and had the desired effect. And, I had one little bar of these tiny pads that had like 36 sound sources in it. So when I went back to playing acoustic, I wanted more sounds. I wanted the sounds I had electronically. And around that time, Mr. Persons broke up, I was asked to start to do drum clinics. And this is where the sponsors, drum and cymbal companies, put you out on the road. You have a captive audience, all expenses are paid, and you get a set fee. And I realized I had a captive audience of interested drummers who, without any commercial restrictions on myself creatively. So I took advantage of that and just started creating pieces and adding little things to my drum set over the years, and got to the point where melodically I needed to be a little bit more organized, let's say, not using bongos or something that was really affected by the weather with animal skins on it. That would be a different tuning every night. Right. So I developed these piccolo toms, and first started out with a diatonic set of those, and was kind of exhausted that by playing in every possible mode and making a little Bach-like piece that went through all the different chord changes and their relationships that I liked, within the diatonic scale. And then I decided to go chromatic. And I thought, well, I've got the white notes here. Why don't I just add 3 black notes on top and 2 black notes on the bottom? And man, to move around that kind of a setup was stupid. So I think after 3 versions of the black note, white note thing, I figured out that there was a system that would work for me, and that comes from the European chromatic accordion, which is kind of at an angle, and it moves up in half steps. And so this system really works. If you go left to right, you always have a minor third. If you skip a note, you have a tritone. If you go up and to the left, it's chromatic. If you go up and to the right, it's always a whole step. So this system really helped me to get deep into melody, which is kind of where I'm at now. And then the rest of it is just, what can I add to make interesting, colors and textures aside from the drums themselves. And so it got into having banks of sounds. Like if you're going to play melody, you need at least a few notes, to make the points. So I have 3 sets of, kind of cymbal things. One is a very dry double china set, and that's, in an 8-note grouping. And then in the same sort of 8-note grouping, I have open chinas, and then in another 8-note grouping, I have some heavy bells and cup chimes. And so I can do basically, once you get the motor memory for how to move up and down and loop around this 8-note set, you could just, play the same patterns on 3 different banks of sounds. Then, you're dealing with, I'm playing so much melodically, and you end up maybe in some Baroque hall in Lyon in France, and it was beautiful for violins, and, had all the Baroque cherubs and paintings and everything, but the reflective sound was so intense that the notes didn't come out. And I thought, okay, I've got to be able to control how the audience perceives what's happening. So I put MIDI triggers on everything, and now I double the notes I tune the drums to with a reinforced MIDI sine wave. So it just, gives the basic fundamental pitch, and, that happens along with the drums. So no problems except for this, I should say MIDI is like a great system, but it's almost out of date now with computers. And then what they haven't done anything about is the triggering system, which is basically a stick-on piezo transducer. And a transducer is basically a little metal plate with some kind of liquefied and epoxified crystal on it, like, Marconi and Edison used back in the 1800s. So it's a microphonic element that is really not appropriate for all the vibration that happens and the cross-triggering that happens on a drum set. So I'm hoping somebody will invent some kind of light technology that, when the stick cuts across the light path, it will trigger and make this kind of thing fail-safe.
My goodness. I must admit, I'm a bit of an idiot when it comes to drums. I'm more of a guitar player, but that was all kind of shocking to me because I didn't
Well,
know that drums could do this.
Yeah, and you're very lucky because you have an instrument that's been around for at least 400 or 500 years, maybe thousands of years. Stringed instruments are pretty set. The piano's pretty set, and so it's just up to you to play. You don't have to make what you want to hear, invent what you want to hear, so that you can make it happen.
Right. Wow. So, all right, listen, I've been to a million concerts, and I must admit, there are many times when I see a drum solo where that's where I go get my beer, or
yeah, that's what I would do.
Well, yeah. So how do you keep the audience connected with you for a full show if it's just you up there? I mean, this is.
Well,
I'm very excited to see the show on Wednesday because I've never heard of anything like this before, and I mean, it looks fascinating when you see it on YouTube, but those are short clips, right?
Yeah, and probably bad sound, and probably, I don't know.
Right.
YouTube is not my favorite place to enjoy things, but
me neither.
It's good for research.
Right, and I'm just wondering how you're going to keep my attention for how long's your set? About an hour, hour and a half?
No, it's 2 hours.
2 hours. Okay, so how are you going to make me not want to go have a beer?
Well, here's the thing. In all humility, I am the only one who's doing this, and that is a great asset, but it's also my biggest problem because I need a paragraph and you need to really see me in order to understand what it is I'm doing. You have this popular belief that a drum solo is just a bunch of bashing, and usually somebody takes a break to go to the bathroom or what have you. And that is a difficult thing for me to overcome. So all I can say is thank God for the cult audience that enables me to survive by coming and supporting my shows. It is something you haven't seen before. It's melodies, it's music. You can go away singing the themes. It's as if a pianist was playing, and there's ballads, there's Middle Eastern moody atmospheric pieces. There's one piece I call Debussy that takes a theme of his, and I developed a piece around that. That's sort of a ballad. There are sections that are my influences are basically from classical, Western classical European school, a la Stravinsky, Perez, and Debussy and Ravel, and then improvisation within jazz. If I say jazz, people think generic jazz, think a swing beat, ding ding a ding ding a ding, and that's not the kind of jazz I'm influenced by. Although it was a part of the history of it. But Miles Davis and Weather Report, Orchestra took it to another level. And so, if you think of Weather Report, they used film elements, classical elements, lots of space and atmosphere, and everybody was a virtuoso, but and soloing all the time, but improvising in a compositional manner, not just this is my solo and I'm going to play as fast as I can for 16 bars and impress everybody. Then the third influence is ethnic percussion styles from around the world, which are the roots of what we do here in America. Post this kind of bloody rich, militaristic, which came from marching bands of war, kind of competitive drumming that we had with big bands. So, what I do is if you could imagine a cellist doing a solo concert, a cello's usually considered a melodic instrument, but they do play harmonically as well. So there's harmony and melody and dynamics and orchestration as well as rhythm. And, you want to have orchestrational variation, so that's why I have a lot of extraneous percussion and different types of contrasting sounds that you can combine and use to make a contrast. And it's a very, I don't know, the other thing I can say is when my father was young. He was a child prodigy accordion player. And when I was a little kid, they would beg him to take out the accordion and play for them on a Sunday with families or people, friends who were over. And he would begrudgingly pull it out and just play one chord and silence the room. And I saw this power that he had to draw everyone right into his heart and soul. And I envied that power. And I found that I could do that a little bit with the drums, and I've made that my path. So, rather than play a melodic instrument, I made the drums a melodic instrument, and I do that every night.
Oh, this is going to be fantastic. I'm like, yeah. I mean, I'm speechless when it comes to this because I had no idea. So this is going to be a fantastic night on Wednesday in Ottawa.
Yeah, we should have a lot of fun.
I want to ask you a couple questions about your past, if it's okay.
Yeah, I guess.
Just a couple little ones. I have a question actually from a drummer friend of mine who wanted to know something about Treacherous Cretins.
Treacherous Cretins was a piece that Warren was in the band. My friend Warren Cuculo got in the band, was eating dinner backstage at the night of the show. And Frank was out on stage tweaking his amp and he was playing something. And Warren immediately stopped eating and ran out and grabbed his guitar and plugged in and started to play this little lick behind Frank. And it was a beautiful kind of Lydian-ish mode lick. And they played together for 30 minutes or something. And Frank, when he stopped, came up to Warren and said to him, "Congratulations, you've only been in the band a week and you already wrote a song." So, that's about all I know of that story. Oh no, the name, I think the title came from Frank's, told Warren, you wrote a song with me. And so Warren said, "No, Frank, I was just, backing you up. And, I don't want any credit. I'm not like those other treacherous cretins who happened to come up with Frank Zappa, who was a real genius, moved on, and they never did." So it was one of those digs at whoever messed with Frank in those days, who was in his band.
Wow, that's very
cool. Thought he should get more money or something.
That's funny. Okay, I was looking at some of the guitar players you've played with over the years. I just got a partial list here: Zappa, Beck, Steve Stevens, Robbie Robertson, Earl Slick, Steve Vai. When you're preparing to do a session,
Alan Holdsworth. Don't
Holdsworth,
forget Alan Holdsworth.
Yeah, how could I not?
One time I got to play with Jeff Beck with John McLaughlin too, and man, it's like a who's who of the greatest guys and my serious influences. So I'm a pretty lucky man.
You are, for sure. And, but that comes with hard work and talent as well. Don't just say you're a lucky man. How do you prepare, or is there a difference in preparing for each of these guys, whether it's a session or a show?
Every situation is a different thing, and there is no manual. There is no set way. The key thing in music is to remember music is a humanity. It's an art and a science, but it's also a humanity. So you have two personalities. They come together and something happens. And just like the elements in a soup, or the ingredients in a soup, you change one ingredient, you got a different soup. So it's really that kind of, face the unknown and let's see what happens. And with musicians, it's very similar to a marriage. You meet a lot of women, but you only marry one woman. And you meet a lot of men, but not all of them become your friends. Just one or two guys really become your best friends. And it's the same with music. You either hit it off or you don't, on whatever level you're talking about, whatever category. Like, for instance, Steve Vai, I didn't like playing with because his method of working is more like Zappa and totally controlled. And I was punching in every bar, things like this. On the other hand, I love Steve Vai because we're both Italian, we're both musically educated, we both have the Zappa experience, we both have similar spiritual beliefs, and on every level, I love the guy, but we couldn't work musically. And that's no fault of either one of us. It's just I'm more of an intuitive, and he's more of a constructionist.
Interesting. Well, listen, on a personal note, I would like to thank you for the albums you did with Steve Stevens. And I am a huge fan of those albums. Steve Stevens was my very first interview I ever did for this little site I've done.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea how great Steve was until we started playing, and then this whole other side of him came out that was not posing with the biggest hair in the world and really out of funk. But I mean, his sounds, his intonation, his rhythm, and his ideas are all beautiful. I really, really enjoyed those three albums, and I'm still very proud of them.
Thank you for this. This has been amazing, and I've learned, I mean, without even seeing the show, I've learned so much about what can be done on drums as opposed to just, like you said, just bashing out something as fast as you can. So thank you so much for this. This has been...
It's my pleasure to help me promote the show. Is a real asset. Thank you so much.
Oh.
And I look forward to coming to Canada. Most of my audience is I think more understanding and open-minded because of their education in Europe and in Japan. And my experience in Canada has been that way as well. There's more open-minded people here, and it seems to get over. Whereas in the States, people have very narrow views and expectations of what I do in 1973 or 6. And it's not quite, not quite the same. You just get a lot of guys yelling out Zappa sometimes, or I mean, not everywhere, but I would say just as a generalization,
right.
I shouldn't do.
Right.
But I'm trying to give you a backhanded Canadian compliment.
Well, I can't speak for everyone, but we are pretty cool up here.
Yeah, you are.
Have you been to Ottawa before?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been pretty much everywhere in Canada, and, my cymbal company is up there.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. God bless.
You too, and looking forward to the show on Wednesday. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks. You too.
Bye.